Before we dive in, this week's episode is brought to you by my free cheat sheet, 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write. In this guide, I give you 30 ways that you can find time to write in the small gaps that appear between the various errands and tasks and responsibilities that you have in your day-to-day life. Now, you might be thinking that you don't have any time to spare, but I can guarantee these top tips will give you writing time you didn't think you had. If you thought writing always involved a pen and paper or a keyboard, think again. If you thought you needed at least an hour at a time to write your manuscript, I help you reframe that. You won't be disappointed. Get your free copy of 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write by going to emmadesi.com/30 Top Tips. Okay, let's dive in to today's episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Turning Readers into Writers. And this week we're going to be talking about the 5 ways to feel good about your writing, because it's so important that you feel good about your writing in order that you carry on writing and you don't give up because you think none of it's any good, none of it's worthwhile. Who would want to read my work anyway? I'll just give up. No, we don't want that. We want you to keep on going, keep on writing, get to the end of that story, because you know what? Your story deserves to be told and the world deserves to hear your story. So let's dive into the 5 reasons or the 5 ways that you can feel good about your writing. Hey everyone, and welcome to a special sort of solo edition today of the podcast Turning Readers into Writers. My name is Emma Desi and I am your host, and it's lovely to have you here. I wanted to talk today about how we can manage to feel good about our writing, because it's such an important part of the process to feel good about the work that you're doing, the progress that you're making, the learning that you're doing. It's so important to enjoy those processes once you're in them as well. You know, when we think about the work that we've got to do, particularly if we're thinking about a whole novel that we've got to put together, so 50,000 or more words, some of you might be writing epic fantasy and you're looking upwards of 110,000 words. That is pretty daunting when you think about it. And especially if you are writing your first novel and you don't yet know what your process is, you don't yet know how you work putting together such a long piece of writing, because it's not something you've done before. Perhaps you are like I was for so many years. I would get really excited about a new project and I'd start it and I'd be very gung-ho about it. And I would work on it constantly. It was all I would think about. So every spare minute, I would take myself off to the library or a cafe or somewhere, and I'd get writing, and I write by hand, so I could write anywhere basically. But then sooner or later, the excitement would wear off a bit, because it was getting tougher. So I'd be past that first maybe 10, 15,000 words of the story, and I'd set everything up and I was feeling really good about it. But then I'd be into the soggy middle, you know, I would be there getting into those tricky bits, and it got difficult and it got hard and I didn't really know what I was doing and I felt very lost, and that was when I would give up. 9 times out of 10, I would give up around that time. I think there was one novel I got to maybe about the 70% mark and then lost interest. And that's because this is a difficult thing that we're doing. This is a very complex, very detailed work where there's many moving parts. I think it's Jenny Nash who describes it as an intellectual endeavour. It's not just about sitting down and writing as the muse takes you, as the words come. It is about having an idea of what the story is about, why you're telling the story, who you're writing it for, knowing who your audience is, who your reader is, that individual reader, and then also knowing what it is that you are trying to say about the world, about life, about the human condition, whatever it might be, what it is you're saying about life with this story. And those can be difficult concepts to articulate and solidify in the very beginning. But they're really important to have an idea of. They're important to understand for yourself so that it keeps you on track as you are writing the book. But as I say, I do know that those are tricky things to get to grips with, especially when you are writing your first novel. You know, it's really, really hard. It's when you're writing your first novel, that's when you are all consumed by plot. At least that was my experience. I thought it was all about plot, making sure that my plot line was fast. There was always something happening, that it was constantly moving forward, that it had to have lots of twists and turns and ups and not so many downs, but always trying to get the plot right, keep moving that plot forward. What I didn't think about was the story. What is the story I'm trying to tell? Because that is so important. The story is what connects to the reader. So you can have a great plot line where you do have lots of action, you do have lots of things happening, but it all feels very one-dimensional. It feels very flat because you've not, or certainly I had not thought about the story. How does my character interact with the plot line? Does my character's behaviour and the decisions they make fit with the plot line, or have I made them fit into the plot rather than the plot fit with their story and what it is they are trying to achieve in this book? So there was lots of things to consider. It's very daunting. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I don't want you to think that this is something easy and that if you don't get it first time round that it says something about you. Doesn't say anything about you, your talent, your capabilities. It just is an acknowledgement that this is a really hard thing to do. It is this very tough intellectual endeavour that involves managing lots of different personalities, lots of different plot points. We still have the plot, and lots of different motivations and moving parts, as I say. So I thought this might be a nice episode to do, just to give you some ideas as to how you can start to feel good about your writing, because if we don't feel good about either the writing itself or the practice of writing, if we don't feel good when we finish a writing session, then we're not going to carry on doing it, are we? We're going to begin to dread it more and more and more until we just stop. So we have to have a feeling of coming to something that is of value to us, that is nourishing you in some way and giving you a sense of purpose. And working that bit of your brain that so enjoys this creative way of being. Just on a side note about this, I used to be asked, what is it that you love about writing? Why do you write? And I never really had a great answer to that question because I could never fully explain it. I could never articulate why I enjoyed the process of writing so much. But I was reading a book by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now, and the thing that came out of that book for me was that writing is my form of meditation. And it was such a lovely realization to have, because it just made perfect sense. So for me, when I am writing, particularly when I'm first drafting, I am right there in the moment of that scene and what's happening to my characters. I'm not consciously thinking about their past and worrying about all the things that they've done and done wrong. nor am I consciously thinking of their future and all the things that I've not yet thought about, and how am I going to tie all these pieces together. I'm right there in the moment with the characters. I'm in the conversation with them. I'm in their brains, remembering the things that they are remembering in that moment, feeling the things that they are feeling in that moment. And so when I'm doing that, it means that I'm not worrying about my past mistakes and all the bad decisions I've made in my life, nor am I worrying about the future and what's going to happen in the future, and am I going to make the right decisions, and is this book going to be any good? Will I publish it? Nor am I worrying about what's for dinner tonight. All of those little things that frazzle our brains and kind of really overload us on a daily basis. When I sit down to write, all of that disappears, and I'm simply right there in the moment of that scene. I am living in the now. And so then that, therefore, is my form of meditation. That is how I switch off from the world. And that is my mindfulness, I guess, being able to just focus on what's happening right now, right here, and not worrying about all the other stuff that's going on in life. So I loved that realization. It just made so much sense. And maybe that resonates with you too. Maybe that is something that you get from your writing as well, is that that feeling of being just in the moment. So if it is, do let me know. Come on into the Facebook group, Turning Readers into Writers, and let me know what does writing do for you? Why do you love it so much? Because we do all come to it for different reasons. So coming back from my digression about living in the now whilst writing. But yeah, if we want to carry on writing, if we want to have a long-term writing career, a long-term writing future, we've got to be able to enjoy it, and we've got to be able to feel good about the work we're doing. Our work doesn't need to be perfect. This is a writing practice. This is like yoga. I do often kind of liken it to yoga. It's a practice. It's nothing that we are aspiring to be perfect at, because there is no such thing as perfection. No book is perfect. So I've got 5 ways that you can to help you feel good about your writing. And the first one is to look at how far you've come. When you think back to when you started writing, when you thought, do you know what, I'd love to write a novel one day. And perhaps you were at home in your bedroom, in your parents' house. Many of us started as teenagers. And maybe it was journaling at that time. Maybe you started writing small stories, snippets from your day, just little things that came to mind, even what we would now call flash fiction, but perhaps wasn't called that back then. Just those first forays into the idea of doing some creative writing for its own sake, which in my school, certainly we didn't do that. I don't remember doing any fictional writing. Certainly lots of essays about Shakespeare, about Austen, about Harper Lee, all the books that are on the curriculum, doing a critical essay about them. But I don't remember being encouraged to actually create fiction. So when you think back to that time, and then you think about the next steps, which was maybe to take an afternoon class at your local library, perhaps, just for a couple of hours one morning or one afternoon. And you started to learn a little bit more about the craft. And so maybe you did a series of classes that maybe took place over a month. Or then you might have signed up for an evening class at your local college. Again, with all of these things, learning a little bit more craft as you went along. And the wonderful thing about workshops, of course, that books can't really replicate in the same way, is that you're there in that space with the facilitator. You're in the zone, you absorb the energy of the room, and it really helps to focus you. So you are taking the teaching that you're getting in that workshop, and you're immediately able to apply it to the exercise that they give you. And so you're integrating the learning that you're doing into your writing. You might not kind of think of it in that way. You might not be aware of it in that way. But over the years, with every workshop and every class you've taken, that's what you've been doing. You've been learning something new and then integrating it with the exercise that the teacher gets you to do. You perhaps have repeated different classes and you've gone over the same material again, but each time you do it, you take something new from it and you implement something new, and you up-level your writing just a little bit with each time you repeat the exercise or you repeat the lesson. And then you may have decided, okay, I'm going to start reading some craft books now. And again, you slowly but surely start to increase your craft, up-level your craft little bits at a time, just incrementally. And then you start to implement what you've learned from that book into your writing. Still perhaps just doing short stories, but maybe by now you know that you want to write a novel and you're starting that. And if you're like the majority of us, you will start many of them. You'll start many of them. And again, this serves a purpose, this is helping you to hone your craft, to implement things that you've been learning over the years. And so with everything that you do, every start that you make, even if you never finish them, with every start that you make, you're getting better and better. So think about where you are now. If you're similar to me, you started writing about 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, and you've been doing little bits on and off over the years, but always getting better. And so as a suggestion, if you have any, go back and look at your early pieces. If you've got anything from school, go back and look at those, and see what you were writing at the age of, when you were a teenager, 16, 17. Then have a look at what you were writing in your mid-20s, mid-30s and so on until present day. And so see for yourself the journey that you've made. See how much you've improved over the years. And you never know, actually. You might even you might even be surprised by what you read. And that leads me on to point number 2. So the second way that you can feel good about your writing is to actually read those earlier pieces and see how much you've improved. Make the comparison between then and now. And you will see the improvement. Absolutely. No question about it. You will see the improvement. And depending on how old you are and how long it's been between those first pieces and now, the improvement will be greater the longer that you've got between school and now. But the thing that you may also be surprised at is that some of your earlier pieces, you'll be surprised at how good they are. You'll look back and of course you'll not think they're perfect, and you'll recognise that you could do better now. But actually, when you look back, you'll be far less critical of the work you did then than you are of the work that you're doing in the present day. So go and have a look at that, observe that, see how you feel about it, and you will notice that you have improved and things are so much better. Okay, we are going to move on to point 3 of the 5 ways to feel good about your writing. And that is to break your writing sessions down into small goals. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the thought of this giant project. So I really encourage you to break the goals down into small, digestible chunks. So rather than saying to yourself, okay, today I'm going to write a whole chapter. You might not be in the space for writing a whole chapter. That just might not be available to you on that day. But instead, you can do what I do, which is I'm going to go and I'm going to write for a certain period of time. And so that works really, really well for me. And whatever I get done in that time, fantastic. Sometimes it's very little. Sometimes it's a lot. It depends on the headspace I'm in and where I'm in the story as well, how I'm feeling. Did I have a good night's sleep the night before? Do I feel energized? It might be a good time of day for me. It might not be a good time of day for me. All of these factors play a part in how productive you're going to be at that given time. So you can break that down into a small chunk, a small goal of a time frame. Alternatively, that doesn't work for everybody, and you could consider doing it as a word count. So you might say to yourself, okay, I know I'm going to try and write 500 words today. Or if you know that you're a faster writer, maybe you're going to write 1,500 words that day. That can be a good objective for people as well. And why I think this works, why I like it, is because it's tangible, it's measurable. You can, it's something that is not too big. And at the end of that writing session, if you've achieved those 500 words or those 1,500 words, or you have given yourself the time of 40 or 50 minutes, however long is available to you, that's measurable and you can see your progress. So even if you say, okay, I'm going to write 1,000 words today, but you only write 600 words, that's still 600 words more than you had before you started. And so that's a really small but great way of feeling good about your writing. You are seeing yourself making progress. You don't feel like you are, what's the word I'm looking for? That you're just paddling and not going anywhere. You can see the progress, that the story is moving along, that you are getting to uncover your characters. You're learning about the story and about your protagonist as you write and as you take that time to be with the story. So being able to kind of measure your writing progress, the story progress, that's a really good way of feeling that you are achieving the smaller goal of what you're going to do in that writing session, but then also the bigger goal of writing the whole novel. You can see that you're getting closer and closer to the finishing line. And that's a really good feeling to have when you pack up for the day and you head home. So that's number 3. Number 4 is keeping your word to yourself. I think this is really, really important, and not just for writing, but actually for any aspect of your life, keeping your word to yourself. So you have decided that you want to write a novel. You've made this commitment to yourself. So now show up and do the work, now block in those writing times. If you've heard me before, you know that I'm a huge believer in scheduling your writing time, especially when you're a new writer and writing is not yet part of your day-to-day life. This is new for you. It's a new habit that you're looking to build. It's not something that is ingrained in you just yet, and you need to spend some time fitting it into your diary, making sure you've left some space for it, so that over time it does become just a natural part and parcel of your lifestyle. That writing is just something that you do. You know that each week you set time aside and you do your writing without even thinking about it. That's where you're trying to get to eventually. But when you're just starting out, you're not there yet. So I absolutely believe in scheduling your time. So my steps to that are really, really simple. Number 1, you look through your diary and you put in for the week ahead, and you put in all the important things, like your work shifts, picking up the kids from school, any dentist, doctor's appointments, any arrangements that you've made with friends, say, and you pop them in the diary, and then you look around that. So what space is left? And that's where you slot in your writing time. Now, you have to be reasonable about this. You do need to have some a little bit of leeway so that you're not putting yourself under pressure. You need to fit these writing times in when you know that you will show up for them. So if you know that you've got an appointment at the hospital, for example, and there's a good chance that's going to run over, don't then schedule a writing time straight after that appointment, because there's a real possibility that you may not make it. And then you're putting stress on yourself, and then you don't turn up for that writing time and you feel guilty for it, and it makes you resistant to showing up for your writing again, because it doesn't feel good. It leaves a nasty taste in your mouth, and you're a little bit ashamed of yourself for not doing it and guilty that you didn't turn up for yourself, even though, you know, it was the hospital appointment and it was going to run late. So make sure that this is a time where you know that you can actually do it. Now, I'm going to also kind of say to you, this doesn't have to be in between appointments, in between other diary appointments. It can be within a diary appointment. So if, for example, you do have a hospital appointment and you know you're going to be waiting for a long time, which certainly here in the UK, there's a good chance that's going to happen, take your writing with you so that you know that you've probably got maybe 20, 25 minutes, maybe longer, to work on your novel. If you have younger kids and you take them to activities, you know, maybe you can the kid goes into a class and you're waiting for them, so you've maybe got an hour of waiting time. You could spend half of that working on your novel and half of that chatting with the other parents who are waiting. So you're maximizing the time that you've got available to you in your week. Now then, there are going to be other times, and maybe it's the weekend is the easiest one for you, where, yeah, you do get to say, okay, I'm going to go to the library for an hour or 2 hours, or I'm going to go to a cafe. If you're like me, I like to go to my local cafe because I get that feeling of being around other people, so I don't feel so lonely, but I'm not chatting to them, so they don't disrupt me. I don't get distracted by what they're talking about, so that works really well for me. You know, maybe it's locking yourself away in your bedroom for 40 minutes on a Sunday morning while the kids are out playing football or doing what kids do. So look for spaces around your diary that you can realistically do your writing. And remember, it doesn't have to be an hour at a time. It can be 15 minutes. Now, in those 15 minutes, you may not actually be writing any prose, but you're thinking about your book, you're thinking about your novel, you're thinking about the characters, you're maybe jotting down some notes, or you could be dictating some notes into your phone so that you're always got it top of mind, and then the ideas that you've had can marinate in between so that next time you do get to sit down and do the writing, those ideas have been bubbling away and now is an opportunity for them to come forward. So look for those times in your week that you can realistically show up for yourself. And the key thing about this is to show up for yourself. It's so important because that way you're proving to yourself each and every time you show up for your writing session, each and every time you show up for yourself, you're proving to yourself that you can do this. You're proving to yourself that you're committed. You're giving yourself the evidence that you need, that this is well within your capabilities. And if you just turn up for yourself every week, once, twice, 3 times a week, you will make the progress that you want to make. It is absolutely within your grasp. So keep your word to yourself because you feel so good about it. You'll feel so proud of yourself and of giving this act of generosity to yourself, because writing really is an act of generosity to yourself. It's something you love that gives you a huge amount of pleasure, helps you to meditate if you're me, gives a real sense of purpose as well. I certainly have a feeling of purpose that I'm contributing to the world when I write. And I feel proud of myself at the end of each writing session because I've done it. I've achieved something. I've created something out of nothing. And if you do that too, you too will feel proud of yourself and be proud of being in charge of your time. So rather than letting time just drift away, in front of the TV for another night, or pottering around the house, not doing an awful lot, having, 20 minutes that you can spend on your novel, and putting you in charge of your writing time can make you feel really, really good about your writing. So that's number 4. Keep your word to yourself, and I promise you'll feel very proud of yourself. And then the 5th way to feel good about your writing is reframing how you see the challenges of writing. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, writing a novel is absolutely challenging. There's no two ways about it. This is a tricky project that can take up to 2 years. Even more, it takes time. But these challenges, they're actually a really, really good thing. They are very positive. Because if you didn't have these challenges of writing, if it came to you easy peasy, it would very, very quickly lose its charm. Because you'd end up writing by rote, you'd end up writing by formula. It wouldn't engage you in the same way. The challenge of writing is the fun of writing. It's that puzzle. It's putting all those jigsaw pieces together until you get the whole picture. It takes patience. It takes deliberation. It takes continuity. It just takes time. It just takes time, and for you to show up regularly and just plod away at it little by little by little. But you want to see this as a positive thing. You want the challenge, because that's what's keeping you on your toes. That's what's keeping your brain nimble. That's what's keeping your imagination going, and helping you stay in that flow of creativity and imagination. So the challenge is the amazing thing. And the more challenged you are, the more tricky a scene is, and the more it's forcing you to kind of dig deeper into your imagination, to be more creative with the way that you can either get your character into trouble or out of trouble. That's where the magic can really, really happen. The unexpected can come out of this sort of desperation of being forced into a corner whereby you've got to come up with something much more interesting than the first thing that came to mind. And that's when the really interesting ideas come. That's where you surprise yourself. That's where you also feel proud of yourself. And that's where you get to feel really good about your writing, when it surprises even you that this idea came out of your imagination, popped up from the back of your brain, and gave you that feeling of magic. So embrace the challenge. It's a big part of it. It's an important part of your writing process, and it's how you get better. It's one of the ways that you keep growing, you keep developing, you keep up leveling your craft and your storytelling, is through these challenges. Just like, we say to our kids, and we see them learning to read, learning to write, and how difficult it is at first for them, and how they have to really think about how they blend all these letters together and the different sounds that some of the letters make. We've got to really think about that. And then eventually it becomes second nature. They can do it so much more easily. And that's the same for your writing. Things that feel very tricky at the beginning, whether it be structuring a scene, whether it be plotting a whole novel, whether it be delving into your character and figuring out what it is that you are saying about life at the beginning of your story. All of these things, the more practiced you become at them, the easier they get. Now, they never become easy, but that's a good thing, because what are we doing? We are reframing that idea of the challenge, that the challenge is the good thing, it's the fun thing, and it's what makes us grow as writers and as creatives. All right, so I hope that's useful to some of you. And for those of you who are kind of like, do feel bad about your writing, who do look at what you've done and tend to, you tend to err on the side of criticism rather than on the side of positivity. I hope some of these suggestions will help you see your writing in a new way. So just to recap, the 5 ways to feel good about your writing is: look at where you've come from. Look how far you've come. You have come such a long way from those early days in your first foray into fiction writing. The second way to feel good about your writing is to read some of those early pieces, and perhaps you'll surprise yourself and see that they were actually very good, or much better than you thought they would be. Because when we've got a bit of distance between ourselves and something we've written, we can see it from a more objective point of view. We're less emotional about it. We can read it as a reader rather than the creator of it. So go back and read some of those earlier pieces. Number 3 is to break your writing down into smaller, measurable, tangible goals. So then you feel good about the progress that you're making, and you can see the progress that you're making, and that makes you feel good about the project as a whole. The fourth thing to do is to keep your word to yourself. So schedule in that time to write, be realistic about it, look for where you can find those writing times, or even those times to think about your writing. Schedule them in, and then show up for yourself. Keep your word to yourself, and you'll feel good about that, and you'll feel in charge of your writing time rather than your time controlling you. And then the fifth thing to feel good about your writing is to see those challenges as a positive thing, to see the puzzle of putting this big story together as a fun jigsaw. It's not there to make you feel daft. It's not there to trip you up. It's there to keep things exciting, to keep your brain ticking over, to keep your imagination flowing, and keep you interested as well, so you don't get too bored. All right, wow, lots to take in there. I hope you found it useful. And if you want more advice, help, tricks, general education on being a writer and living a writer's life, then I really encourage you to come and join my mailing list, where I send something to your inbox every week. And you can do that easily. And as a way of saying thank you, I have a cheat sheet for you, the 30 top tips to finding time to write. And if you go to emmadesi.com/30 top tips, you can just pop in your name and email address, and I will send them straight to you, and you will hear from me on a weekly basis. All right, take care for now, everybody, and I'll speak to you soon. If you're a first-time novelist who is struggling to either finish your novel or get those revisions to where you want them to be, then I've got just the thing for you. I have a small group coaching program which runs over 12 months, and over the course of that program I will help you fix those plot problems that you've been struggling with. I'll help you get under the surface of your characters so you really get to know them and what's driving them. And crucially for you, I give you that self-belief that you need to get you through the roller coaster that is writing a novel, so that you can carry on, get to the end, and get your book, your story out into the world so it can change people's lives. If that sounds good to you, if that is something that you'd be interested in doing, I know I can help you get to where you want to be. So book a call with me. Let's have a chat and see if we are a good fit for each other. If you're interested in doing that, then go to emmadesi.com/story builder. I look forward to chatting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found that helpful and inspirational. Now, don't forget to come on over to Facebook and join my group, Turning Readers into Writers. It is especially for you if you are a beginner writer who is looking to write their first novel. If you join the group, you will also find a free cheat sheet there called 3 Secret Hacks to Write with Consistency. So go to emmadesi.com/turning readers into writers, hit join. Can't wait to see you in there. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.